Well. After a historic night, Raw was Netflix. And what a night it was. We are going to break it down. Hi, how's it going? It's been a minute. And for many of you, it is the first time. Let me introduce myself really quick for those of you who are checking me out for the first time. And those of you who know exactly who I am, welcome back. I am Rob's MV. I go by on Twitter, as you can see right down in there. And this is the Nocturnal Knockout, a Brass Ring Media podcast on the One True Sport YouTube channel. The debut episode of the Nocturnal Knockout being right here as a part of the One True Sport YouTube channel. Now, what better night to kick things off than the night that WWE themselves has billed as this sea-changing night in the company, a bit of a new era themselves, and we're gonna burn down our own new era right here on the Nocturnal Knockout. There is plenty to talk about coming out of Raw's debut on Netflix. A bunch of results, some pieces of real newsworthy and noteworthy items that we'll discuss, and honestly, more than anything else, more than the event of this being on Netflix and what that can symbolize and all the big conversations, is we got some legitimate build to things going forward. We did get a ton of questions answered. There's going to be a lot more questions to answer, a lot more Raws and SmackDowns and big premium live events going forward, obviously. And tonight isn't going to answer all of that, but we had some seeds planted. Tonight was, I'd say, officially the road to the Royal Rumble, and that was the thing that was emphasized in the results of some of these matches, especially the main event. And now we're off to the races, which means we're in wrestling season. WWE has a history of this, obviously, of these early January Raws. Usually they're like on the 4th. They have kind of infamy on that night. But tonight it's on the 6th. And it was a whole new era of Raw. For several weeks, WWE had seemingly been building everything around this show. Everything else had to be sacrificed for this show. There was no other option. This was their number one priority, above Saturday night's main event, above Survivor Series, above the first 3-hour SmackDown. Because it was the first time in decades WWE was live on Monday night from somewhere other than, well, like cable broadcast. Like this even predates Raw. The WWE on Monday nights, that's wrestling night. And obviously now you're on Netflix. That's a hell of a sea change. And I want to talk about it in the context of the show, but before anything went down tonight on the show, WWE put out a ton of content to their YouTube channel, which obviously I think their YouTube channel is probably going to be a little bit more active now in the Netflix era as the streaming gets divided and conquer. Right now, you could be there on the YouTube channel right now, WWE's YouTube channel, and checking out the post show as I did just a minute before I came on here. But that promo, that cold open, right? It really spoke in this really, really weird way about wrestling being this television product, the way Triple H talked about it. This is something that's been enjoyed and booed and cheered and all these things, all these contrasts that have happened over the years as Monday Night Raw, WWE, professional wrestling has evolved. And if anything, that promo, that cold open, what that was meant to say is all of that is over. The cable television era of Monday Night Raw is over. Now, we knew that was the case, but they're really putting a stamp on it. You know, they're even making comments about the size of the screens and all of this stuff. And if you watch tonight's show, it didn't look drastically different from Raw. There were a few pieces of production that were slightly different. There were some different drone shots than we had been given, but that stuff had been changed for a while, ever since, Kevin Dunn and the switch to leaf fitting and all that. Some of that stuff was on board, and this is essentially a season premiere for the company. So you knew some changes would be in there, but for the most part, Raw looked like Raw. It was timed out like Raw. You got commercials at basically the same spot for the same amount of time. So on that front, there wasn't a whole lot different. As far as this been a special edition of Raw, I would say this was an extremely, extremely different, and maybe you can say special edition of Raw. because these special edition of Raws are rarely like this. They're rarely this wrestling heavy. Usually, when you have a special edition of Raw just like this, they're built around a parade of cameos and returns. Big pops for a guy you're going to see for 30 seconds, remembering this guy, look at that guy. And you had a little bit of it tonight, and you had one guest cameo that did not go as well as they were hoping for. More on that later. We'll talk about that. But tonight was a wrestling heavy night, and it was the wrestling that mattered. It was the results that mattered. There was two big promos tonight, two specific promos, and they were pretty important guys talking. The Rock and John Cena. You might have heard of them. But again, tonight was about the matches, and they were long matches. They were drug out matches. I don't think anything was a 5-star classic. I don't think anything was meant to be that. But I don't think there was anything that was that bad. In fact, on that note of the cameos and appearances, there was a bit of delineation tonight. If you were on television tonight on Monday Night Raw, and you were shown in the suite up top, like the suite where Shane McMahon announced the WCW wrestlers were hanging out before WrestleMania 17, like the WCW wrestlers that weren't the ones that everyone wanted to see with the invasion. Basically, if you were shot in that suite, that means you were a lower card guy. If you had a match on this show, if you had a significant segment of any type on this show, it meant you were a significant player, at least within the context of Raw. Now, there's one other thing to note that I want to note as a very, very specific, what I felt was a production change on this evening. And then after that, I think we can open things up a little bit and let's talk about some of the individual results. You guys are already in the chat, so you guys want to talk about some of the things happening. So we'll get to all of that here in about a minute. As I mentioned earlier, this is the Nocturnal Knockout. Normally, or in the past, you could catch this show in the evenings. Usually it's a post show, most recently over as a part of the Brass Ring Media Network, which you can check out all of our good work over on Patreon. Got the YouTube channel up there, all the written content. But this is the first night over here as part of a whole One True Sport. And my man E gets in there. He wants to make sense of The Rock's return. Seemed to live up to the hype, though he was going to get the final boss and not board member of The Rock. The Rock was weird tonight. The Rock was all over the place. Here was the other change I wanted to mention, though, before I go on. And this is the other change I thought of the format of the show. Is this Raw wasted a lot of time? Just because I said there wasn't a lot of cameos and those big pops and kind of things that you're used to on these celebration or anniversary Raws. Do not let that fool you. This Raw wasted time. They wasted a lot of time, in fact. But instead of wasting time on these backstage skits and these things that they normally do, what they did is they took a page out of the UFC's book where they just started showing the crowd. Now, WWE has been known to do this over the years. They always like to show the crowd. And in fact, NXT, that was always one of the running jokes, right? You'd have to be in the seat to get shown for like 30 seconds on the takeover specials. And then you get shipped to the back. Tonight was a little bit different where they were doing it more UFC style, where not only were they showing the celebrities, some of them who they were correctly identifying and some of them who they weren't. And it was basically your typical WWE celebrities. You had Bill Simmons, you had Topanga, right? You had all the normal WWE celebrities. But something they did tonight is people who weren't on the show were showcased as being in the crowd, as if it was a UFC event. We're watching like any UFC event and a champion that's not fighting on that night or a big star, they'll just show them in the crowd. He's pretty hyped up, a little drunk, maybe promoting the card. That match, I thought that was supposed to be on coming up, but you could be right about that. I could be wrong. There was a lot to get to tonight, but yeah, that stalling wasn't the most entertaining thing. However, if this is the norm, it means that there's less Raw for us to watch, because that was something else that I think stood out tonight. And this has been the case for a while. Whereas this thing right here, the remote hasn't been that big of a factor in a while, because most people are watching streaming and it's, you're flipping back and forth. You're on this device, you're on your iPad. you're doing your thing. So you're not as much competing with the channel. So maybe, just maybe, Raw wasn't trying to hold your attention in the same way it would in a television sense, where it's like, we need action, we got to cut to something, we got to cut to something, where they had more dead space, which in some senses can maybe make a 3-hour Raw go by a little bit quicker. Now we have 6 hours, well, 8, and we'll have The Rock on more of this week. You have a lot of first run television, or whatever you call it, streaming right now in WWE. So that's a lot of programming to watch. So anything that can make it go by just a little bit quicker, I think that's a positive, and that's something I definitely support if it works. If it's a signal, like just watching this and taking notes for this tonight, the cues, right? You're going to go to the restroom, you're going to do your thing. It can be a little bit predictable. And tonight had a predictable pattern. In fact, even in terms of an overrun, you would think like, yeah, they can overrun as much as they want. And it basically ended with maybe a minute or two overrun. Nothing too extreme, nothing outside of the time constraints. Again, you flip it over to YouTube, you get a little bit more of Punk's promo. And then I think we have now the press conferences where we will get probably not a lot of meaningful questions. Let me take a sip of water real quick, and then let's break down the entirety of this show, all 3 hours. What's up, QCG? Now, it's like not every night that we can go up, right? And in the past, break down Raw like this, especially 3-hour Raws, because they were never structured like these sports type of shows the way you could break down some of the more traditional pay-per-views, where you could literally kind of go down the Wikipedia list, right? And just go down match by match results. You can kind of do this on this edition of Raw, because outside of a few segments concerning The Rock and Roman Reigns, everything was pretty self-contained within itself. There wasn't a whole lot that led to something else to watch later. A lot of stuff was advertised and then delivered upon. That's a good thing to note. E, thanks for doing that. Keep us posted, or keep me posted in the chat. It's only me right here. I have my phone right here. I'm not going to be on my phone for the most part. I'll be talking to you guys. And if there's anything that happens in the press conference, any breaking news, which right now doesn't seem to be much, but if there's anything that happens, or from another wrestling website, I'll check it out on my end first, obviously, to make sure that it seems like legitimate information. But anything that happens, go ahead and let us know. All right. Let's break down the show, though. Let's break it down from the top. So, as we were about to get the go live screen, that was the moment of hesitation. Now, you assumed that after the Paul Tyson fight, maybe Netflix would get it together, and it seemed like after what happened at the NFL games, they did. The NFL games were going to put a bigger volume than tonight was going to put. So if they could get those together, they could do tonight. And I did not see any issues with Netflix. I don't know about you guys. If you had issues with your stream, put it in the chat. I would love to hear from you, to hear the stream stories. Those are always fun to know. And there's different issues that people have. Maybe if anyone could help each other out, we could be a little bit of a community. But you had the weight screen. We don't have the shows on USA to lead us in anymore. I'm not going to know about Dick Wolf. That's disheartening to me. No, just sitting on the weight screen. Look like some like AI of some of the guys. I thought maybe of Seth and I don't know if they're going to put anything in eventually that's a bit pre-showy, but maybe that's just a weight screen. Technically, we had like Michael Cole opening the new era of Raw. He was the first voice. Um, he's the voice of modern WWE, so it is what it is. And then they cut to that YouTube video that I mentioned earlier, which was the cold open. If you break it down, there's a few things. It is them declaring the new era of Raw. It is them declaring that it's no longer the television product. It's evolved. Everything's bigger. The Triple H, basically the hype thing he's been doing since his Papa NXT days in the mid 20 teens. So he's still running that. But I think this promo package served something a little bit more. It was like Triple H's version of the, good guys and bad guys speech that Vince gave at the end of 97, basically telling you that the Attitude Era was here and we're into our new style of wrestling, and this is how it's going to be. And that set the stage. And some people look at that as like the purification point. And I don't know if tonight is, but that was kind of the feel of what I think Triple H was trying to convey with that. With that said, I think that's a huge elephant in the room the entire night that has to be brought up. We'll talk about what happened with Hogan's situation there. That was something. That was interesting. That was fun to watch. Do you have to be in the building and you're and you somehow are live and can put in the chat? I would just like to know what happened. That would be good to get some perspective there. What was going on the ground? With that said, but he still made the cut. Hogan is still in there. Obviously, it's hard to tell the history of WWE without Vince McMahon, but it's really hard to tell the history of Raw with his iconic calls and everything to do with him and Austin in that show and his commentary for so long. So that was just one of those things that you had to sort of go through that very, very quickly, which as a result, some of the things he was involved in gets erased along with it as we're sort of adding these new voices. And these are the new voices that will be theoretically cemented forever. Like this, maybe consider the new Raw from 93. It's this one. We had the Undertaker on both nights. So maybe there's the common thread. But after Cole welcomed everyone in, it was really Triple H that did the real welcoming of the crowd. And he did his signatures, he did his "Are you ready?" And he welcomed us to the Netflix era. And then we got the big reveal of the ring. And I got to say, before that, they had this really cool effect with how the curtain was like a cube while they were playing the cold open video. So you couldn't see the new ring. And then there was the drop down for the new ring. And that was the big reveal. The ring was all black, which is cool. I do like. As someone who likes a lot of black and red, I do like that. That's basically the colors for Raw. And you had these big long strips of the ads that were over there. So we're furthering into this NASCAR era of WWE. We knew the advertisement is coming. There's ads on everything we're streaming. There's Prime bottles all over the place. Guys are kissing the ads in the middle. It's the era we're in. And it's the two long strips, big black. Other than that, from a production standpoint, it basically looks like WWE, other than, again, the NASCAR ring. Hasn't got to UFC proportions yet where you just can't see any of the canvas and it's just sponsorship. It looks better than that. So those are the aesthetics, and we start off, and we get The Rock to open up Raw. We've known for a little while that The Rock was going to be a part of the show. Obviously, a new era of Raw, his position within the company, both on screen and backstage. You're in Hollywood. Of course, The Rock was going to be there. Final Boss was here. Or was it the Final Boss? You guys be the judge of that. It seemed like The Rock didn't have enough time to shave or put in his contacts. I thought he looked old, but I thought he looked that way probably intentionally. Looked a little bit more distinguished. Just looked a little bit not like the Final Boss. The Final Boss is an older character too, but it's a different vibe that you're going for. But Rock comes out there, big long entrance. He has to, that's funny. You're shaking hands, you're kissing babies, you got to hug all the Netflix executives. some of his daughters. I mean, those little girls, right? They're future champs, they're future authority figures. We know it. Just be submissive to them. But I was thinking, as he's cutting the promo, how many of these like iconic shows has The Rock opened over the years? And he does have a bit of a distinction. What I mean by that, like if you think about some of the more iconic SmackDowns, he's opened or at least been a part of big segments. In a few of them, you have him main eventing the initial SmackDown way back, 99 on UPI. I believe the pilot and the actual one. I think he main events both of them. He's very prominent in both of them. And then he's in the opening segment in 2019 when they go to Fox with Becky Lynch. I want to say too, he's part of the launch of Raw to 3 hours. I don't know if it's that Raw he was at in 2012 that he kind of main evented. Anyway, he's a part of these big weekly episodic shows, which he has announced he will be on NXT tomorrow. Speaking of. And The Rock had to do his thing, and he congratulated them on the biggest gate ever. Which, when a crowd cheers for the biggest gate ever, this is the funniest thing ever to me. Like the LA crowd just cheered, like, hell yeah, we spent more money on this wrestling show than like anyone else ever has. Cool. Like, good for you. I mean, it's an exclusive ticket. I'd be proud too. I spent money to a lot of expensive stuff that I should never. It was a waste of money. So I get it, but it's a funny thing to cheer for, LA. Really though, the start of this, and you got to see what this was. This was not a Rock promo to start out. No. This was a corporate presentation by a corporate officer within the company. That is exactly what this was. He came out there, yes, with some catchphrases and stuff, but it's as if you hired Dwayne The Rock Johnson to do your corporate presentation, to do some of his stuff. And maybe, yes, there is some stuff in storyline, but it was more subtle. This night was not really about The Rock that much. Yes, he was a dominating presence, but he was a little bit off to the side, more so than I honestly thought he would be going into the night. He thanks a lot of people. There were a lot of people that were thanking people when they spoke tonight. He shouted out Cody, which there kept being these allusions to Cody, which obviously clearly the direction they're heading in. Every time he's made appearances post WrestleMania, whether it be the night after WrestleMania, he being The Rock, the special event, I can't remember which one, that he just showed up and sort of looked at Cody. He's been eyeing Cody. So he shouted him out as, holding it down for a year, which in that moment, I kind of thought he may have been referencing Triple H, which would have been really ridiculous because now you're doing a complete corporate thing. So at least he pulled it back into a little bit of kayfabe, a little bit of storyline. But The Rock also shouted out Roman Reigns and promoted tribal combat, which I figured would be what he was really there for on this night. But he didn't really say much. Like, it was basic, generic, mostly a babyface. I would say almost completely a babyface. And then he hugged Cody. I should mention where Cody was. So Cody was the first guy that was like the superstar that was in the crowd. It was like, all right, well, Cody apparently had to like buy a ticket to this thing because he was waved, he was shouted out by The Rock. He got the Mama Rose reference, all of that good stuff. But that's where the reference is. They do their thing. That transitions us though from there into tribal combat, and that's that. Rock goes back. We do get an update from The Rock later on. We get an update about his social media presence, and that's what leads into the NXT appearance. But as far as him, really, I would say being consequential on this show. There's another thing he did in storyline, but as far as him being consequential, yeah, kind of ended right there. Now, Michael Cole, and he did this on the post show as well. He referred to this as the biggest night of his career. Could be. I don't know. There may be bigger ones. I don't feel like tonight is the night to evaluate what the biggest night of Michael Cole's career was. But I don't know. It's a big night. I don't know if tonight was the one. But I figure we're opening with tribal combat because this is the old Brock Lesnar move. Like, The Rock wants to go home early. He wants to get to bed. He wants to take off those spectacles and read, get some rest. The Rock comes, Roman comes out though, with Heyman, huge pop, all of that good stuff. Before we get any matches, we got our first commercial. our first commercial of the Netflix era. So before we got any action, we got Andy Reid over there replaying the Chiefs chef's joke from the 90s. That was really the first start of the action. So we opened up this historic era of WWE with The Rock and Andy Reid, two of the great maestros of our time. Now you have tribal combat. It's supposed to be a brutal fight, and the other matches on this night that were brutal fights did not happen this way, but tribal combat did start with a lockup because, of course. And through the first commercial break, nothing really happened in this match other than the crowd was just really into it because they were kind of into everything, although they would be quiet. This was one of those crowds that was into the product. I think thought most things were over and we're into what they were into, which was most things. And other than one thing that was really one thing that really didn't go over well, they were into everything, but they weren't like overly enthusiastic. And sometimes that's a California crowd thing. It wasn't one of those crowds that's just noise and ambiance and like insanity all night. And California crowds, at least mainstream WWE California crowds, I should clarify, don't really have that. You get some indie California crowds or some traditional California crowds. That is a little bit different. But yeah, into the second break, it was still kind of going back and forth, but the crowd was into it. With that said, it was just slow. And I thought that was the case with a lot of the matches on this 3-hour Raw. That was mostly a presentation of matches. Let's be honest with you. The matches were kind of slow. The thing that was actually getting the most reaction kind of early in the match were the tables. Tables will never not be over. Tables are the biggest face ever, period. Crowds love tables. And that's once Roman got a table out, that's when this thing got going and the pace picked up a little bit and the crowd really got into it. You started getting into the section of the falls and you had the run-ins. You had the run-ins really start after a power bomb spot. You had Roman power bombing Solo to the table. Looked like it could be the end of the match, but you had the ref pull spot and there was that evil Tama Tonga. And then Jacob Fatu was in there and everyone was killing Roman. But Roman, he kicked out of a spike. Chad Patton ate a spike, but never to fear. Sammy Uso, Jimmy, they were there to save the day. Roman got the dreaded visual win for 17 seconds. Didn't count. We got another ref. The crowd was really hot. Ref took kind of a long time. I'm tired of the refs taking so long in WWE to come back out. Like, do they have to be sworn in? Isn't there another ref just sitting back there? This happens in a lot of your matches. If someone goes down, can we get someone out? This was a long time. This is what we got to This Is Awesome. Right after the ref spot, though, you started getting the This Is Awesome. And you have now, again, I don't think this was on the better side. This was not the upper echelon of some of these this wasn't a Roman Reigns title defense, but the big Roman Reigns matches. Not really. But you started to get into the big overbooked section of the Roman Reigns title match. And I say overbooked, that's not necessarily a derogatory term. It's just kind of how these things go down, but it's what the people like about it. And so now you get into the hot crowd part where everyone is just into everything. And then KO came out to help Solo, and that seemed like that might have been it. But now Cody came out. Cody was one of the few guys that was not like booked on the show, that was in the crowd, that apparently was also allowed backstage. Don't know how Cody had all this access. Maybe being the champ gets you that. I'm glad it comes with some privileges. But he's updated from being a fan. You had a spike spear. Go home. Roman is now the tribal chief. The Rock does come back out, places the Ulafala on Roman, takes off the glasses, the spectacles Rock was wearing, takes them off. They join hands, they embrace. Roman is acknowledged as the tribal chief. That was hour 1 of Raw. So that was a big old long monologue by me. You probably got tired of me talking. Let me take a drink of my ginger ale here. That was the entire first hour of Raw. Basically, you might want to say one storyline, one thread, one match. You have The Rock's promo, Tribal Chief, the Tribal Combat match, I should say. And then you have the coronation. And thus ends this chapter in the bloodline. Who knows where we go here. Who knows? Do we still have a bloodline? They are greatly diminished. This was fairly definitive. Yes, you had all the run-ins, but Roman beat him, and Roman has been getting the best of him since the return. Obviously, it's not the bloodline anymore in the same kind of way, but The Rock again, fully babyface. Almost everything of the night, his interactions with Cody. I didn't even realize she drinks ginger ale out there. I watched her podcast a couple weeks ago. Yeah, we should. See, I would like actual beer on here, but it's kind of late, and I might get cranky, so we'll stick with ginger ale. Generic ginger ale, we'll say, because we don't have a sponsorship. What do you guys think, though, of The Rock not really having any involvement here, though, other than the acknowledgement of Roman Reigns? On the one hand, I think you should maybe be kind of appreciative of it. This is the former, the star of the past, the literal head honcho of the company, passing the torch, giving his respect to the top guy and the guy he was involved so much with the storyline. But the Rock's change of demeanor here did not sit well with me. That I didn't like. Obviously, I think all the lines are pointing towards him and Cody at Mania, and that's a huge match, and one that I think they can do a really, really good job in building. And I think everything is in place for them to have a hell of a build, including last year's build, not just what we saw on the screen, but everything they played with backstage, everything they've released, everything that's been in the reports of the sheets I put out. I think all of that stuff combined is going to make for a pretty loaded program that will kind of be able to serve for sure as one of the tentpole main events. I think we have the other main event. If you bookend this show, I think you see where WrestleMania is going as far as the two major matches. There's gonna be a lot of big matches on WrestleMania this year. Storylines be culminating, but there's still a lot of unknowns. And so this is something, though, I would say I would go out there and I saw that later in the night on Instagram, and that was just weird. He's referring to, let me put it up on the screen. I'm talking about these chats and I'm not referencing any of them. So you guys are looking at it if you're watching this. I'll leave it. Social media of Rock and Cody shooting the shit, having a drink like kayfabe never existed, showing him regular Rock rather than final. Like, remember what he did to him? I guess time is a flat circle, because remember when Hogan and the NWO just destroyed Rock, and then he shook hands a couple weeks later, and they were like really happy. That was bad. I don't want to justify that. Like, thinking about that was bad. This isn't much better. This isn't much better. But that was our one. Now, yeah, the four, I would say the four people are booked to the two main event not booked, but I think you're doing Rock Cody on one night. I think you're gonna do Punk and Roman as one of your other matches, but a lot to be determined. Early prediction, as early as you can get out of January 6th prediction. For stuff that's not exactly set in stone. But that was our one. Tell me what you thought of our one in the chat. We can go back to it. We can break down anything in the night, go back, go forward. Now, hour two was very important. We kicked off with the all important announcement of the Saudi Rumble, an official Rumble. It won't just be the Braun Strowman 1,000 men Royal Rumble. No. 2026, the Saudi Rumble happening. They stuck that in at the start of hour two. But after that, we got another announcement. We got John Cena coming out for his first appearance in a long time. I don't remember when it was. John Cena announced, his retirement. This is going to be the end. And then we never saw him again. So it was like, cool. The guy who once feuded with the guy for saying he was never going to leave and stayed around now said he was going to leave, and then really left. There was no progress, almost to the point where it seemed like they announced it too soon. But this, you might say, was the official start maybe of the Cena farewell tour, because he actually has some progress and some competition for him. Now, this was LA Dodger Cena coming off the World Series win for the Dodgers. Cena's always getting close with the local sports team, especially now that they don't even mind the pandering. Like the crowds are so into Cena now, just seen him as a legacy act, as a guy they remember from when they were kids, been around so long. The crowds actually like the Cena pandering. Now Cena, he thanks people. There's another guy that was just giving thanks. Yeah, Triple H was giving thanks. Rock gave thanks. Now Cena was giving thanks. Freaking November over here. He thanked the fans for making Raw global. Raw airing live all the time, all that stuff. It's on Netflix right there on your phone. He also thanked Raw. And then he went into his thing talking about patronizing, where he reminisced about LA, days of the prototype, over there with Roland and the UPW. Talking about his different LA memories. But he also acknowledged that it had been a really, really long time. He gave the actual amount of days. And I don't have that in front of me, but I'm sure you can look it up. The amount of time since Cena has won a match, which this is wild. They never do this. Now, obviously, veterans on their way out, they don't win a lot of matches. And this happens for years and years and years. And it goes beyond like the guys who lose on Raw all the time, right? And then, you wonder why they're not over. And no, but I mean, like the big matches. But a guy like Cena, who's, he's not on house shows, he's not on Raw every week. He's only kind of in these big featured matches. And even when they're against the likes of, say, an Austin Theory or a Solo Sikoa, he doesn't win, and he hasn't won in a really long time. I got to say, though, at this moment, there was something that was really, really annoying. You had McAfee there on commentary. Good God. I get why he's there. He's very, very popular, but my ears, please, God heaven, my ears. And throughout the night, but especially during this segment, it's like no one put the mute button on Pat. Sometimes you got to do. You got to hit that mute button. And he was like reacting sort of in real time or something. Like the way he was providing the commentary was just not working at that. But ultimately, this resulted in, Cena saying he has no realistic shot at winning the next title to break the record, unless he wins the Royal Rumble. It's impossible, but don't ever give up. So full on thing. It was all the ruse to get there. I do have to say though, because I'm going to say that Cena is now in the Royal Rumble. Good for him. Cena is much better at entering the Royal Rumble than he was in entering the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal about a decade ago. Remember that? That was the kickoff to WrestleMania season for like 3 years in a row that Cena was going to join the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, and he just like kept getting distracted with other evildoers. I think now he has successfully entered in the Royal Rumble. Oh shoot, Anthony, I don't know about that. I'd have to follow up, and that would have been a heck of a debut. Anthony talking about Penta debut. Is that, can he? I mean, is he good for TV? And I would be unsure on that. And yeah, they still may have more bullets left in the chamber. They may not want to go all in for just tonight too on something like that. I think we learned from AEW, when you have a lot of these surprises and a lot of these things, sometimes you might want to spread them out. But you gotta have to strike while the iron is hot with them. But there wasn't. Yeah, no, but put him actually on TV. Anthony is what I'm referring to. You also had after the Cena stuff. Um, you had a Logan Paul promo where he just asserted that he was still in WWE, part of the Raw roster. Kind of implied he was full time, but I think all of that then is it's happening on Thursday or on Friday for SmackDown. Like that'll kind of make sense to me. So that's why I'm going through my head. Like, did they announce that for Monday, or did they announce that? And if it got, bumped for time, progressing it through the guys in the crowd. Logan Paul's not going to be full time. I don't think so. It's just declared that he would still be with the company after like the offhanded comment he made on his podcast. It turned into all that. Middle of second hour though, we start getting the music, and we got Liv versus Rhea for the Raw Women's Championships. Now we have a little bit more of consequence match into hour 2, and this is where they started with the long segments, right? Where they were just showing everyone. That's actually when they showed Ray and LA Knight was during that moment. Hey, but at least this match did not start with a lockup. They just started fighting, and they kind of beat the hell out of each other. This was pretty fun. It was no, that's all that was. This was a lot of Rhea beating up Liv. You had all the shenanigans. Everyone just wanted to see Rhea get her victory. Rhea looked amazing. She was so over with this crowd. She got the win. The power bomb order was restored. This thing has gone on for so long. It's been good. It's been a cornerstone some nights on Raw. It's been going for a long time. It has needed to end. We need to move on. Order is restored, but at the end, Dominic, of course, we have to sort things out with Dominic. And I have my notes here. Dom submits to Rhea, right? Put out his arms, but alas, he ate the low blow. So I don't know if that's what Dom was looking for. I really actually, to your point there, I'm fascinated with what Dom's gonna do next. Like, I want him and Rhea to just have a damn match already. But like this does help sort of reset a little bit of that. Although the Judgment Day kind of has to be reevaluated as a whole. But from Rhea's exit, we had the intro of ABA Undertaker. I say ABA Undertaker, not even Biker Undertaker, because this was the Kid Rock flavor of American Badass Undertaker. This was not the rolling Undertaker. This was not you're gonna pay Undertaker. No, this was ABA Undertaker. And it started out with the traditional gong. And so you thought maybe you might get Dead Man Undertaker, but no, that was not the case. As has been the case since the retirement, you pretty much get Biker Taker when you see him. Now, he came out on the bike at first, and I kind of just thought maybe they were squeezing the segment in there because it seemed like there was no reason why he came out there with Rhea. First, I thought maybe they were going to try to connect him, this and that. But then it did end up with Rhea doing the pose with the fists up in the air as they rode off. A bit of an endorsement. Cool moment for The Undertaker. This was one of those cameo appearances. This one went over a whole lot better than the one they did later. At least well, I mean, Snoop Dogg's a Hall of Famer. I guess they're both Hall of Famer. I guess with the Undertaker's thing though, coming out on the bike and endorsing someone else, like even in kayfabe, that's just for a pop. Like that's not even to confront someone. That is just for a pop. I still don't know what the hell he had to do with the main event of WrestleMania this year. Don't know why he was hanging out there. What that mattered to him. Fred Durst is also pissed tonight too, right? Like, how did Kid Rock get that on there, and he didn't? This is the point though where they cut to the Rock's like Instagram stuff, where he was walking around with his bottle, hugging Cody on Instagram, presumably drunk driving after the fact. I don't know. Maybe we should get the police on him. Travis Scott and his blunt got a pretty big pop upon their entrance. That was actually a cool moment though. When they did like that. They should just put Snoop Dogg in the main event of WrestleMania 40. That would have really made sense. Have him end the bloodline. All right, so hour 3. So if you're keeping track right now, following along my timeline, first of all, thank you. Across platforms, about 7,000 of you guys watching. That's awesome. You got 2 matches, 2 hours. And now we've got the last hour of Raw. So you thought maybe something would get cut. And this is what it dawned to me. There hasn't been like something that was nothing. There hasn't been anything that was really like a preliminary match, anything that was lower card. There was some stuff with Gable, some stuff with Adam Pearce. Again, lots of wasted time, lots of dead spots. We had to get Bill Simmons showing his Celtics thing for some reason. Yeah, I figured we're in the streaming era. That's a little bit different, and even all the references they used to have too. So Drew and Jay was, I wouldn't say the low point of the night. But the crowd was into it. It was a little slow. It was where, if anywhere, the crowd needed to kind of come down and needed to save their energy. Sadly, this was the place. And then I think even after everything we saw earlier in the night, parts of this feud too still feel a little kind of warmed over, because what is Drew still in his search for? I think maybe just that kind of SmackDown vibe didn't really work here. But it was fine. Like, there was nothing bad. This is not a bad match. But just in comparison to everything else. But Jay did get the quick win, which was actually stunning. Did not see that happening at all. I thought this was gonna be, further in the Drew McIntyre versus everyone Rager tour. That was right into the Gunther promo, and that's all. That's actually stunning when you think about it. When you think about Gunther is the champion of this show, and that a pre-tape promo doesn't feel right at all. And it's cool. I mean, Cody was not officially a part of the show, but you basically, if you watch the show tonight, you would think the two main eventers of Raw are like Roman Reigns and The Rock and CM Punk. And only one of those guys is a member right now of the regular Raw roster. The Gunther thing didn't stand out as much earlier. And reading it in the chat, thinking about it, like, yeah, that is something. Now, there's not really a whole lot for him to do. He was mentioned. He's mentioned even in Punk's promo. And I think obviously the Rumble winner is probably Gunther's partner. That's how I feel as of right now, but we'll see. That also led to Roman being, venerated, of course, by Heyman, and asking when he will return to such a platform. And Roman said that January 27th he'll make his grand return to Raw. Just happens to be the Raw right before the Royal Rumble this year in early February. So the go home in terms of the Raw side edition of Monday Night Raw. It's a redundant sentence. That'll be the next time we see the official tribal chief. So it's over. I mean, he's fully acknowledged. Now's when the show got good, though. This is when the show got good. Hogan and Jimmy Hart slowly made their way to the front of the video screens. This was something. This is an all-time moment. Now, this is an amazing piece of like this Pavlovian thing here. As you probably know by now, Hogan got booed. This was the one thing on the show that completely went against what they were trying to present on the show. Something that used to happen on Raws all the time. Doesn't happen in this company. Nowhere near as much. But Hogan and Jimmy Hart got booed. At first, they didn't. There was a big old cheer for the Real American. And then people realized that they hated Hogan. They probably should have thought before they brought Hogan out to be the mascot of the past about what state and city they were on. We can say all we want that we're going to keep the politics out of it. In fact, that's Hogan's official statement on his beer thing, which is really what he was there to promote, his beer. But once you embed yourself as a political figure to the point where you speak at political conventions, that is who and what you are. And then aside from that, what he's put out on tape, we know who and what Hogan is. So it shouldn't be surprised that in California, this man was not welcome on this night. Completely disconnected to the promo he was cutting there. I don't know if Hogan could have, maybe like an NWO Hogan could have turned this around. Hogan pretty quick on his feet. I think he might have been able to do it. He was going word for word. Now, he didn't stumble over his word. Good for Hogan. He didn't put us in the Silver Dome. He didn't put us in the LA Memorial Coliseum. I don't know where the hell Hogan would have put us, but at least we didn't do that. He got his lines right, despite being like mostly booed pretty mercilessly on this evening. And then coming out pretty slow, waving the flag. And then on top of that, he had the shirt under the other shirt, which we don't need to see necessarily a 75-year-old shirtless Hogan at this point. Look like a bit of we don't need this. Hogan, he's another guy. He's got a reputation on these early January Raws. I think we all recall what happened on the finger poke of doom. That was an early January show. There's also, if you want to go back to the Forgotten Wrestling War of 2010, January 4th. This is an infamous day in wrestling. That's where Hogan showed up to ruin Impact Wrestling permanently. I think it was TNA back then. And then tonight, Hogan gets booed. Now, going back to that January 4th, back in 2010, Hogan was cheered most of the night. There was one segment, though, that he was booed. And I can't believe this guy is still freaking on TV to this day. He got booed whenever he was trying to cut a babyface promo on Jeff Jarrett, like against Impact. You remember that? And people like started cheering for, they're fans of the brand. So they started cheering for the founder of the brand. They weren't really there to, take a crap on the brand. I mean, I guess, well, lots of puns intended there. When it comes to Vince, anyway. Moving on. Now we go into our main event. So 4 matches. That's all we're going to get on this night. 3 hours of Raw, 4 matches. Now, thank God I'm not reading this sentence in 1999. If I told you it was an episode of Raw, bro, and there was 4 matches, that would have been like 6 minutes of wrestling. Thank God that wasn't the case. Thank God. So Punk versus Seth has been, I would say, especially leading in closer. Obviously, you've had this bloodline stuff that's been built in for multiple years. Even this iteration of it goes back, you can say, even at the loosest to WrestleMania, but it goes back much further than that. But this is the thing, Seth versus Punk is what they're building for this show. It's what they've put all the content on YouTube. They did a 30-minute sit down that Punk did with Jackie Redmond building this. You saw the Busted Open guys very much helping out the people in WWE, talking this in kayfabe-ish terms. 4 of them. And so this is what they were building towards. And you looked at the clock. There was about 30 minutes left. Now, that doesn't mean anything on this night. And it never has on Raw, right? You go to that main event, you get the entrances. One thing I noticed about SmackDown this week, everybody got an entrance. That wasn't always the case on SmackDown. Occasionally, you'd have some entrances be squished. Lots of people got lots of full entrances. Same thing here. They were stalling. They were stalling with this one. With that said, the crowd was ready to see this. And it has to really get at CM Punk, right? There has to be a sense of pride that he's main eventing as a babyface and truly main eventing in the last match. The biggest Raw ever. Well, like Vince McMahon isn't allowed in the building. That's amazing. Now, much like Rhea and Liv, this started out as a fight. Like they started out brawling. And I really, really enjoyed this. Again, had its slow spots, but picked up. And this was the pace, I think, the way a main event should be paced. Punk looks old out there. He looks a little bit slow. He has ever since coming back to AEW, but he doesn't look like he's holding anything back. He's just slower than what his full potential could be. Watch Punk in his prime. Not exactly a speed demon. Not exactly the most athletic dude out there. So Punk having donuts. Thanks for the report, E. But this ended, and I won't go through the match recap. You can go back and watch the match on Netflix whenever you want. Don't have to set your DVR anymore. How about that? But this went into multiple GTS. They were doing the thing where they're stealing each other's finishers, which that's just residue, the Attitude Era. I'm done with that. But you go into both these guys have sort of like these KO type of finishers, the GTS and the stomp, and you had like multiple GTSs. And I kind of like the way they sold this with Seth, where he was out. Like it wasn't just that it had the uh guy does a move, and why is he out for 3? Right? Why can he not respond to the 3 sometimes when they hit a finisher? But this was like they presented Seth was asleep. He had gone to sleep, and they did the multiple GTSs. But Punk won. Like Punk won this match. If anything, the spots where you could say, was there any interference? There wasn't. There was no one else really getting involved. There were some ref spots, but that was on the competitor. So it wasn't like anything that was really nefarious. It was people taking advantage. Looked like both competitors were okay. Both these guys tend to get injured for months and months after big matches, but that was hopefully not the case, and it doesn't seem to be the case. Punk gets the win again, pretty definitively. A lot of talk going in to this match is where is this going to be? Are they going to do a series? Kind of hard to say how long this feud has been going on. You might say this feud has been going on for over a year, but there's been some major gaps. But there's also been, promos cut in between. You could say the Drew feud is sort of a proxy for this, although I think it's its own thing. But ultimately, Punk gets the win. He gets the clean win here. If you watched on the YouTube or the post show, Punk called his shot that he's on top of the world and he wants to get into whoever is at the top. He get the Royal Rumble, he get the Money in the Bank. I think he basically called his shot for the Royal Rumble. See how that goes, but he's in a really, really good spot if he's healthy. Seems to be getting along with everyone. It's wild that WWE is in this position tonight. Still, I mean, I know we're a few months and a few years into it, and it's with CM Punk at the top. And guys, I have been talking for well over an hour, almost interrupted. I'm going to hit mute, take a ginger ale swig, and you tell me about Raw. Tell me about your impressions. Rate the 4 matches. We could never do this on a regular. There's always like a throwaway match. There's always like a minute and a half match, but I mean, there's 4 matches. You can give them star ratings. You can put them in order. You can put them on a tier list. They do whatever with these matches. And what did you think about what was newsworthy out of Raw? You had Cena entering the Rumble. You had the match results. You had The Rock announcing when he'd be on NXT. Other than that, though, I wouldn't say not tons of news. This is a big show, but it's not something where things are in question and we have to be following up. It was just a normal big show. This was a Raw that was truly akin to a PLE. Like this kind of looked like a PLE. If this was packaged a little bit differently, this could be packaged as a PLE. Now, what does that mean going forward? Who knows? It's Netflix. They can do whatever they want. But if this is sort of the fill of the shows, it's kind of interesting because are they going to be these shows filled with bouts? I think we'll probably get a little more of the WWE storyline and stuff as they will need that stuff going forward. But who knows? So he's gonna do a promo, maybe an open challenge. Assume you're referring to Cena. And really just bumped the stuff to fill the time. They could have done IC Women's Title match. Well, and here's the thing. I don't think that they can do that format or a version of that format. They're gonna have to tweak it a little bit going forward because not every crowd is gonna be so celebrity riddled, and so hot, and you're not gonna have necessarily everyone there. So you're gonna have to figure out other stuff within the margins. But again, you are on Netflix. They showed Macaulay Culkin. He 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 was on there. He got a big pop. Again, that was the pretty much the normal parade of the wrestling celebrities that they tend to show in LA. Four matches if they're doing 45-minute. They did they just gotta figure out what else they're gonna do. But again, if you think about it, none of those were really were any of them. No, none of them were like multi-person matches or anything. There are things they can do. There are things they can do to fill time, and we've gone through this 3-hour Raw era for long enough. We know they can do it. But again, it might be just a little bit different on our habits of watching. If there's just going to be dead time in the show, is there going to be dead time in the show? Topanga, but no Eric. Eric was there. Was Corey there? You got to say I'm done with Topanga. I don't know why. I had this in my head. She's obviously like a huge digression, but opening night of the show. If you're a millennial dude of a certain age, or woman, doesn't matter. But if you're into women and you're of a certain age, there's sort of like this pantheon, and she's definitely in it. But I don't know. Callie from Saved by the Bell and the Pink Ranger and the girl for Roger Rabbit, they're sort of circling around as a big four there. There was no point to that digression. We lost all the viewers there, but that is what it is. Some of the cameos got over better than other. I'm looking at Twitter right now, just scrolling back and catching up. That crowd was not into Nikki Bella nowhere near as much as perhaps they anticipated. Now, there are a few of these that are always going to be weird. Obviously, Michelle McCool gets run like nobody else, right? Michelle McCool's career gets remembered unlike anyone else from the mid 2000s. It wasn't bad. Good wrestler. I really like that teacher character that she had, but her pop is something else. Nikki just was not over. And there was a time when Nikki really would have been over with that audience and like that California audience, but it just wasn't. And that's what I'm seeing right now on Twitter. It's her spinning around, and you feel something because they just cut from Tiffany Stratton, who was like one of the most over people in the building. Obviously, big cash in on Friday, right? And poor Nikki, they just didn't pop for her. Felt bad. All right. Let's see what else we got going on the old Twitter machine. People make fun of Bill Simmons. That's always good. Roman's shoes. I can't believe they're back. Like I can't, not that they're back, but they're a real thing. And I like this food with DIY. I'll be honest with you. I like it better than I thought I would. I like everything that's happening with them more than I assumed. So either the crowd in LA might not have been super into Nikki, but apparently my Twitter feed was because I've got Nikki reposted dancing like 72,000 times. We don't need to put that much effort into anything. Anything Carlito does. We're good. We're good. I see Punk eating the donuts. Some notes from Triple H. Early numbers are strong. What's Triple H gonna say? Is he ever gonna say anything with like, are the numbers ever gonna be down? Like we've never really had Triple H on a real down streak, and what are we gonna get? Him just like yelled, justifying it. How's your territory doing, Trips? Is it too late for me to do a good Trips impression? I don't do good Trips impressions. Let's see. Let me see if I. So Triple H in his press conference sort of give it intimation about this being a standalone event. And so he's even acknowledging sort of the self-contained nature. Uh, again, that doesn't mean though next week Raw will just look like Raw had always looked. I don't think it implies that, but the joy and the curse of pro wrestling is exactly that, right? It's that it never ends. That Triple H can say all he wants, like, well, it's something that's not connected to the future. Yeah, it's connected. Oh, look at that. Deadline.com. Hogan gets booed during WWE's Netflix debut. Good job, WWE. You got your mainstream press you're always so thirsty for. There you go. Hulkster. Check one more thing here, and then we might want to get on out of here. See if we get any more updates. What do you guys think? This is kind of fun recapping the show, going through things, this new era. I think we might make this a bit of a regular thing here on Monday nights. It'll kind of be up to you guys. Uh, I think maybe we can add some visuals and some production. I mean, I guess you could say Hogan was undeterred by the boos. He was much more deterred by like the Green Bay crowd a few years ago when he was getting, or this, I guess this was a decade ago, right? When he was getting the network universe mixed up. That was in like Wisconsin. Oh, oh, here we go. Here we go. I'll share this up. It's not. I'm not allowed. Okay. So on the Netflix caption, there's a great there's a photo. I'll just describe it. Jimmy Hart's in the back holding the flag. Hogan's got his hand on his hips with his real American beer shirt, and the Netflix caption just says crowd booing. Huh? There you go. There you go. But other than that, I mean, you did have Cena, but that was probably to the biggest extent of this being or not being a Raw homecoming. I think that's what those shows like. Usually we'd get that, then we'd get Mr. T would come out, and fortunately not a lot of other people are there from like the WrestleMania one main event, but that's kind of what we would see on these shows in the past, and that was just a little bit different. What do you mean the 40-ish minutes? E? What do you mean specifically on that? Let me look in on that. Might have missed that today. Let me check in on that real quickie. Not sure. All I know is that Raw will continue to be 3 hours for an eternity, forever. That is the case. I mean, in the past, I've seen 3 hour Raws get blamed on like ending marriages and all kinds of stuff. And I guess if we can do it on Netflix, we can deal with it. If anything, I guess that might be something that I am looking forward to in the future. Is like, how rewatchable are these shows? How much are people actually? There's gonna be a lot of these shows that are gonna go quickly. It's unlike anything else that really ever gets built up on Netflix that has this massive volumes week after week after week after week after week. What's the rewatchability? I mean, this is live programming too. It's a lot different than even when Netflix has had live programming. It's not usually episodic like that, right? It's these really truly one offs. But as of tonight, WWE Raw, for once being the longest running weekly episodic television show, it was just one streaming wrestling show. It's gonna do it for me tonight, guys. Kind of late over here. It's probably really late where you're at. Been going for about an hour. Been mostly me talking. You're probably tired of hearing me talking. So I'm gonna go ahead and get off. But as I mentioned, I am Rob. You see that little Twitter handle down there? Changed my profile today. I got me a little more active on Twitter. Back in the wrestling game. So might as well get the Twitter game back up. But as I mentioned, this is the Nocturnal Knockout, a Brass Ring Media podcast on the One True Sport YouTube channel. Go ahead and support everything with One True Sport, and go ahead and support everything with Brass Ring Media, including all the great writing we got over there at Patreon, and even the free writing. Patreon, Substack, Brass Ring Media, One True Sport. Throw it in your Google. Easy for me to say, Conrad. Throw it in your Google machine. We've been going for an hour. I'm tired. See you guys next week.